This is the Pentagon Channel. Throughout the day, we'll bring you television news and information programs produced by the Military Services and the Department of Defense, as well as live news conferences from the Pentagon Briefing Studio.
From the AFRTS News Center in Washington, this is the 2-Minute Report.
Today I'm sending the Congress a wartime supplemental appropriations request of $74.7 billion to fund needs directly arising from the Iraqi conflict and our global war against terror.
President Bush made that announcement Tuesday during the visit to the Pentagon. The administration followed the budget supplemental announcement with a round of testimony before Congress. Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld told the Senate Appropriations Committee on Thursday, even if we hadn't gone to war with Iraq, we would still need more money.
If the regime had agreed voluntarily to disarm and prevent a war, the cost of sustaining that military pressure through the rest of the fiscal year would have been in excess of $40 billion. So even without a war, the cost of disarming Iraq would have been significant.
The Secretary said in addition to the money needed for the war, the Defense Department also needs flexibility to spend it where it's most needed.
Just as the military plan that General Franks has developed has flexibility built into it so that our forces can deal with unexpected events in the battlefield, our budget plan must also have flexibility to deal with the changing circumstances on the ground.
The Secretary reiterated that he can't predict how long the war will last.
What I do know is that whatever it ends up costing, it will be small compared to the cost in lives and treasure of another attack like the one we experienced on September 11th, or a weapons of mass destruction attack that could be far worse.
The Secretary said we are in Iraq to do everything we can to prevent such an attack, and this budget supplemental is essential to that effort. That's the 2-Minute Report. I'm Warren Lee.
On the next edition of Army News Watch, the 101st Airborne Division gears up for another potential rendezvous with destiny. 551st MPs stay focused on their security mission in Africa. And Army boxers are a knockout at the Armed Forces Championships. Join us for those stories and more on the next Army News Watch.
On the timeline, today is March 28th. On this day in 1800, the U.S. frigate Essex became the first American warship ever to enter the Indian Ocean. On March 28, 1862, Confederate units attacked Federal troops at a stagecoach stop near Santa Fe, New Mexico. Though caught by surprise, Union forces eventually pushed the rebels back, away from western goldfields. On this day in 1865, as the Civil War neared its end, President Abraham Lincoln was in City Point, Virginia, discussing post-war strategy with top Army and Navy leaders. On March 28, 1944, the 15th Air Force flew its first 1,000-ton raid, striking targets in Italy. On this day in 1953, North Korean and Chinese combatants in the Korean War agreed to a U.S. proposed prisoner exchange plan. For March 28th, that's today's Timeline.
Hello, I'm Marine Sergeant Tiffany Carter. On the next edition of Pacific Report, tradition carries on in Okinawa. We'll tell you about a squadron that honors a flight crew by tracing its flight path every year. Plus, it took over $1 million to renovate, and now it's open to the public. We'll take a look at Misawa's new AMC passenger terminal. Join us for those stories and the top news of the day on AFN television as we bring the Pacific Command to the world on the next edition of Pacific Report.
The Pentagon Channel.
This is an AFRTS News Minute. U.S. military operations in Iraq are going according to plan, with coalition forces growing each day. That assessment Thursday from Brigadier General Vincent Brooks, operations officer for U.S. Central Command.
Day by day, we significantly diminish the regime's ability to command and control its forces. As we do, we witness the regime's forces becoming more and more desperate in their actions.
General Brooks said the discovery of thousands of Iraqi chemical protection suits, while a cause for concern, will not change the way the war is prosecuted.
it certainly reminds us of the reality of this risk that we've been speaking about for so long. What it does for us also is it causes us to take notice and be more ready.
General Brooks said the coalition expects and demands that Iraq abide by the Geneva Conventions. That's an AFRTS News Minute.
Air Force Primetime is next on the Pentagon Channel. Air Force Primetime is produced once a week by the Air Force News Agency's Regional News Center at Ramstein Air Base, Germany. It's broadcast on the AFRTS networks each Thursday evening to service members and their families throughout Europe and worldwide.
You're watching the Pentagon Channel.
Wounded coalition forces arrive in Germany. Family members stationed in Turkey move out of harm's way, and stealth fighters keep the pressure on Saddam's forces. Next on Air Force Prime Time.
From the Air Force News Agency at Ramstein Air Base, Germany. This is Air Force Prime Time with Staff Sergeant Mark Pleasance.
Hello and welcome to the show. Throughout the past week, Ramstein Air Base, Germany has received several soldiers wounded in Operation Iraqi Freedom. The first plane landed Sunday, and by late Tuesday night, the fourth plane landed, bringing the total number of service members with combat-related injuries evacuated to Germany to 21.
It's pretty disheartening to see the nature of the injuries of these young guys, especially considering how they were incurred.
There was sadness that we were bringing home our troops that were hurt, but us as a crew and the medical crew on board, we got together and made the mission happen and got them safely and efficiently.
The 14 U.S. Marines and 7 Army soldiers evacuated with combat injuries are currently undergoing treatment at Landstuhl Regional Medical Center. As the war in Iraq escalates, military members across Europe are preparing for anything. Ramstein Air Base is near Landstuhl Regional Medical Center, the largest military hospital in Europe. And because the base is so close, their job is to be ready if large numbers of injured patients arrive. Tech Sergeant Rolla Suttmiller files this report on how the base is making sure there are more than enough beds for whatever happens.
It was once a basketball court, but in the past 48 hours, it's been transformed into a staging facility for 100 patients.
Yeah, I guess right over here, man.
85 medical reservists from McGuire Air Force Base in New Jersey and a guard unit in Westover, Massachusetts have worked with Ramstein's 86th Aeromedical Staging Flight and civil engineering to get this facility up and running.
I would want to take the best care as possible for the patients that are coming through here and make them as comfortable as possible.
I don't want the supplies spread out all over because I don't want them to think they have free access to this. Okay. I want it down here as close as possible to those shelves.
Unlike Landstuhl Hospital, which will take care of critical patients in need of intensive care, this facility will specifically be used as a staging facility, prepping patients for air travel.
Staging facility is where we hold patients and we prepare them for air evac, and they should come to us pretty much stabilized and be ready to fly back to the States.
Each of these medics are ready for patients, but would prefer not to see them coming through the door.
But of course, by all means, if we never fill up a bed, that would be ideal.
And Captain Zillis speaks from experience. This flag flew from the cab of his New York City fire truck on September 11th, and he's brought it here to motivate him, to give him purpose, and as a reminder for everyone else. Tech Sergeant Rolla Suttmiller, Air Force News, Ramstein Air Base, Germany.
The war in Iraq is not only changing the lives of those deployed, but also the lives of their families. Incirlik Air Base in Turkey evacuated more than 1,300 family members. Tech Sergeant Matt Laba met the transiting families at Rhein-Main Air Base in Germany.
Incirlik families were met at Rhein-Main with cookies, phone cards,
You're
and
welcome.
Tech Sergeant Thomas Proctor.
Okay, this is a phone card. This is a 1-800 number. You call this number when you get to your final destination and let them know that you made it, because we're required to keep track of you guys.
Over the next 48 hours, approximately 1,350 family members will be evacuated from Incirlik Air Base, Turkey. The reason is war, and these are one-way tickets. The Air Force's only concern at this point is the safety of all these family members. The transiting families are mostly kids, some with both mom and dad in uniform. The kids travel with escorts, like Rita Madden. Rita is escorting 2 of her own and 2 more youngsters, all bound for the United States.
I don't know what the next step is. And that's so common in the military, not knowing what your next step is, but you just have to deal. It's very tough.
The voluntary departure of families like Rita's from Incirlik is due to the base's close proximity to Iraq. Tech Sergeant Matt Lamba, Air Force News, Rhein-Main Air Base, Germany.
The F-117 Nighthawk, also known as the stealth fighter, was a big player in the first Gulf War. And now, once again, this futuristic fighter is seeing its share of action in Iraq. Master Sergeant Dan Robinson tells us about the role of this ominous-looking aircraft and what it brings to the fight.
The entire plane was designed to evade radar, and every angle of its metal skin, even the black coating, minimized the F-117's radar signature. And it flies at night, making it nearly impossible to lock onto when it comes in for an attack. This is what defines the Nighthawk's role in combat.
It's designed to be radar evading, and it's carries precision-guided munitions. So the typical thing is that we would be a deep strike into highly defended target areas.
Combine the stealth fighter with more conventional fighters and bombers, and you have a lethal strike package that can devastate nearly anything in its sights.
Hopefully take down some of the enemy's defenses, take down some of the high-value assets, and then leave before they ever get a chance to know that we were there.
F-16 CJs and F-15E Strike Eagles coordinate their efforts with the Nighthawk, each tasked with a specific part of the mission. It's also reassuring to know that someone's covering your back.
Everybody has their own role in the big effort, and we don't want to be out there alone because other guys are out there just like us, risking their lives and making the objectives successful.
A substantial number of F-117s are flying combat missions from this location, taking their precision bombs straight to the target with pinpoint accuracy measured in feet, not yards. Master Sergeant Dan Robinson, Air Force News, Southwest Asia.
Those Nighthawks are just part of a team of more than 100 fighters, cargo planes, aerial refuelers, and a fleet of trucks, cars, generators, and ground equipment at the base. And almost every piece of that equipment relies on fuel. There's one unit at the forward base that can truly say, without them, everything would soon sputter to a halt. They're the fuels flight.
Well over 100 fighters, cargo planes, aerial refuelers, and a fleet of trucks, cars, generators, ground equipment. Nearly everything this base needs to operate relies on one thing. There's a unit at this forward base that can truthfully say, without them, everything would grind to a halt. They're the fuels flight.
Well, currently we can hold 4.4 million gallons. Right now we issue about 300 to 400,000 gallons a day.
Just setting up for a refuel?
More than 30 fuel trucks keep planes on the flight line topped off and ready for battle. Most aircraft here are U.S., but coalition forces are well represented here. It doesn't matter where they're from. The fuels guys can and will take care of them.
Well, it's not a problem for us. We just maintain our fuel inventory here. And doesn't matter what the aircraft is, we'll service if it lands.
During the build-up to war with Iraq, these crews were supporting Operation Southern Watch and were ready for the fluctuating pace on the flight line.
We do around, each person probably does around 8 to 9 aircraft a day. On a slow day, on a fast, busy day, we do around 10 to 15 aircraft a day per person.
And with more than 30 fueling trucks at their disposal, the volume pumped here is impressive. In surge mode, they'll pump well over 500,000 gallons in one day. Master Sergeant Dan Robinson, Air Force News, Southwest Asia.
That's all we can fit in this edition of Air Force Prime Time. From Ramstein Air Base, Germany, I'm Staff Sergeant Mark Pleasance. We'll see you here next time.
You've been watching Air Force Prime Time. Air Force Primetime is produced once a week by the Air Force News Agency's Regional News Center at Ramstein Air Base, Germany. It airs each Thursday evening throughout Europe. Here's where to address your questions and comments.
No matter where you are. No matter what your question.
How can I find the allowance parts list for this national stock number?
Could anyone out there use an almost new surplus tractor?
How can I get a copy of my birth certificate from a hospital in Manila?
Where can I find an automatic bus transfer switch?
Can you help me locate a point of contact for a UYQ21?
Can you please help me locate him?
We connect you to information, support, services, experts, anytime. 1-877-41-TOUCH. The Navy Integrated Call Center, always within reach.
This is an AFRTS News Minute. President George W. Bush and British Prime Minister Tony Blair said Thursday they remain totally committed to removing Saddam Hussein from power, and military operations in Iraq will continue for as long as it takes. Following discussions at the presidential retreat at Camp David, Maryland, each of the leaders said the day of liberation for the Iraqi people draws near.
Slowly but surely, the grip of terror around the throats of the Iraqi people is being loosened.
Saddam Hussein and his hateful regime will be removed from power. Iraq will be disarmed of weapons of mass destruction, and the Iraqi people will be free.
Both leaders said they've urged the United Nations to immediately resume Iraq's oil for food program. That's an AFRTS News Minute.
But personally, I am just so sick and tired of these taxes.
Why do you always do this?
You know, every time you get a paycheck now, most of it goes straight to the government.
Hey, keep it down. You want somebody to hear you?
I'm just saying, I'm the one who's making the money, and I have no say-so.
You know what you're saying? Just calm down. You want them to ruin your life? They can do that, you know.
The Pentagon Channel.
On the timeline, today is March 28th. On this day in 1800, the U.S. frigate Essex became the first American warship ever to enter the Indian Ocean. On March 28, 1862, Confederate units attacked Federal troops at a stagecoach stop near Santa Fe, New Mexico. Though caught by surprise, Union forces eventually pushed the rebels back, away from western goldfields. On this day in 1865, as the Civil War neared its end, President Abraham Lincoln was in City Point, Virginia, discussing post-war strategy with top Army and Navy leaders. On March 28, 1944, the 15th Air Force flew its first 1,000-ton raid, striking targets in Italy. On this day in 1953, North Korean and Chinese combatants in the Korean War agreed to a U.S. proposed prisoner exchange plan. For March 28th, that's today's Timeline.
She stands in the face of evil and will not lose hope or faith. America, the land of freedom, is still the home of the brave. So raise the banner, call no glory. Let us join our fellow man. History will write the story. America will always stand.
In the next Air Force Television News, a growing problem with reports of sexual assaults at the Air Force Academy. Air Force weather forecasters train for the front lines in North Florida. Our Eye on the Air Force profile segment takes us to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, Ohio, where we examine the mind-boggling mission of Air Force Materiel Command and meet the driver behind the wheel of the Air Force race car. Those stories and more on the next Air Force Television News.